So Shri Ramchandra's Rajayoga, centrifugal process. The Sahaj Marg system of training is of a very high standard. It hits at the very root and proceeds from the center to the circumference. It is a centrifugal progress and produces deep rooted and lasting effect. There are, however, teachers of type who follow a different course, touching the surface layer of grosser consciousness in order to paralyze the senses of the Abhyasi and thus create a state of coma. The effect thus produced, though pleasing to the Abhyasi at the time, finally results in dullness of mind and loss of intelligence. Under the Sahaj Marg system, you will find the intelligence of Abhyasi growing wonderfully till it is transformed into divine intelligence. One can feel the gradual transformation in his being if he is sufficiently sensitive. That there are particles pre-existing at the time of creation means particle of matter, since matter in its own form, being a subsequent creation, did not exist at that time. What existed then may better be termed as energy, and the word used here refers to particles of energy which afterwards developed into matter by the action of Shob or the primary steer.
Atul, just a comment here. The commentary on 10 commandments, first commandment commentary, first 3-4 lines, he talks of particles getting heated up. So here you get a definition of what that particle means. Generally, our mind is trained to think in a certain way. Our mind has got certain concept. When we use the word particle, our mind thinks of a solid particle which is separate from two things, like a particle of wood, a particle of iron, or whatever it is. So when we use the word particle, general social reality of language is that it is a piece of matter actually. But then he is forced to use that language. He says the subtlest particles got it heated up, and then first layer of grossness settled in from the Kshob itself, uses that word in the commentary. But now he is actually trying to tell you the particle means it is not matter, because matter is a subsequent formation, but it kind of an energy. So basically we are that energy. Somehow the energy is become particle in this physical body. But there is a subtler layer. I mean, the pranic sheath, the manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, anandamaya kosha, they are subtler sheaths actually. Annamaya kosha is the grosser matter sheath, which is visible, we can touch and feel and all that. But why I wanted is that this is a explanatory point to the first commandment, where he uses the word particle, which generally people have a concept particle is related to matter. That is the idea. We should go beyond the defects of the language and try to grasp what the master is trying to say. He himself, while writing 10 commandments, he says, I request that you go beyond the defects of language and try to grasp what I'm trying to say. So generally particle बोलते दिमाग में वो idea रहता, but he is telling it means energy actually.
Also, I believe at some place he talks about it as a field, like magnetic field. We can never see magnetic field.
Okay.
Only when you take some nails. Babuji Maharaj himself explains.
Yeah, that's...
You take a piece of a paper and put some nails on it, and then you move the magnet underneath it. We'll see them dancing around or whatever. So
that is exactly that's what he says. This invisible force, we can't see magnetic force. In the same way, we can't see the divine force. But the invisible divine force is the force which is giving stimulus to our heart. And because of that stimulus only, the heart beats. He talks about that also in the Faculties of Rajayoga. So it is so obvious, but we miss it continuously. We are not even conscious of the heartbeat. Suppose we rest our attention on the consciousness of the heartbeat, and we stay on that thought for a longer time, then we'll be able to pierce into the mystery of heart, and then we become aware of the invisible divine force actually. That's good. We'll go ahead. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Each particle of energy meant a soul, each soul, one soul.
We have to think like that. Yes.
Okay.
But finally, if you read the Upanishadic literature, even Babuji also, when he said Shobh, multiple souls ante, which is the concept of Sankhya. They talk of multiple Purushas. Ante, no philosopher will accept there are multiple souls. There's only one soul. There's only one unity. The Om or God is one. Everything is of that stuff one. So philosophically, everybody accepts that there's only one reality, and that is God. So when you say souls, two souls are there, nobody accepts it, philosophically speaking. And that is the truth also. That is realized when you do meditation. But for the sake of understanding, to understand the multiplicity which we see in the world, we have to take the help of a language where we have to use that multiple souls, multiple particles, multiple quantum of energy or whatever it is. These are the defects of language, but reality is only one thing only. There is no two people existing. They're all part of one God only.
Then what is Shobh?
Subodh, bolo kya hai?
Shobh ka matlab?
Shobh bole to, this is a word used by Babuji. Shobh is stir. Telugu, we have the, suppose a water is there, suppose you put a pebble, so waves will come out. It is a stirring, a stir in the calm waters. So energy was actually quiescent before the world came into existence. In that quiescent energy, there was a stir. He uses the word shobh for that stir.
Okay.
That's a technical word for that he uses. And as a result of that stir, the whole world came into existence, including all the people, everything which is in existence is because of the manifestation of that stir actually. Atul will go ahead.
Okay. God has no mind and requires human mind for connecting with reality as it has evolved. In this connection, I may add that if God, Brahm, be supposed as possessing a mind, then function of the mind must also be there. Then he too must be subject to the effect of his own actions. But he is universally accepted to be free from all such effects. That means the functioning of mind is not there. This finally amounts to non-existence of mind. I think this complexity of thought arises only because of numerous conceptions of God. But when speaking of God in this conception, I mean God as Brahm in his absolute state, beyond everything, even beyond power, activity, or consciousness, not to speak of mind. Now the human mind through which it works, having been completely negativated, has no individual functioning of its own, and all that comes into action through its medium is divine. Hence, it serves as an instrument of God.
So that is why when we take the object of divine light in our heart, the divine light is present everywhere. That is neither existence nor non-existence. It is beyond all concepts. That's why you simply suppose that it is there, and you don't allow your mind to think what is the nature of that divine light, because you simply cannot think about it. You just suppose it is there. That's all. And you meditate on that subtle idea of divinity, which is neither existent nor non-existence, neither sakar nor nirakar, neither light nor dark. That is the idea actually. That's why Babuji has given us the subtlest object to meditate upon. And when the mind meditates on that subtlest object, the mind also becomes as subtle as Brahman itself.
So, mind here is thought. Is that we can equate them together?
No, when we are sleeping, there is no thought now. So, do you say the mind is not there when there are no thoughts? When you are in deep sleep state, there are no thoughts. So, can you say that the mind appears and disappears? That means Atul Mishra is appearing now, but he was not present for about 2-3 hours during deep sleep state. ये अलग पर्सनालिटी है, कल का अतुल मिश्रा अलग था, आज का वो कंक्लूजन आना पड़ता ना. There was a time when there are no thoughts in you. So there is a time when the mind was not existing. Mind of Atul was not existing during the sleep. तो कल का अतुल मिश्रा अलग है, आज का अलग है. वो conclusion आना पड़ता. So thought is one of the function of mind.
Mind meant manas, sir. Manas and mind is Telugu word for mind.
అందుకోసమే the correct word is called antakarana. Antakarana ante it's a conglomeration of 4 things.
4 things.
Manasu, buddhi, ahankara,
chitta.
all these things are there. Generally mind, people when we are also talking of mind, we take all these 4 things together.
Okay.
But technically speaking, if you see mind, that is manasu. Manasu is the coordinate, like suppose sense organs are getting me information, and then motor organs, now I'm talking. When I'm talking, motor organ, throat is speaking actually. So the coordinating faculty which receives sensory input, which causes motor organs to function, that is coordinated by Manasu, which is again influenced by its past knowledge about the world, past knowledge about concepts, past knowledge about assumptions, past knowledge about information. Based on that, mind quickly decides what to act from the coming inputs actually. So that is the mind. Whereas buddhi is related to understanding and egoistic faculty. Those are 2 are related to buddhi.
Viveka, can we see?
Viveka is generally related to buddhi actually, the understanding faculty. So all this combined together, people use mind, but some people use mind only as the manas aspect, which is the coordinating faculty. Like suppose all informations are coming, the mind coordinates all that and gives a unified phenomenal experience in us.
Okay. Heart is exclusively for feeling.
Yeah, you can take like that. Yes. Heart is associated with feeling, and the brain you can think is associated with thinking or cognition.
Okay.
One point he mentions over here, sir, is that as God doesn't have mind, he is not subject to the effect of his own actions.
Yeah.
So
Vaivana,
whatever actions we do, they
uh,
leave impressions on us.
yes.
So
But if you are in harmony with with Rita, or with your harmony with the universal consciousness, like suppose you don't feel that you are separate from the whole creation, and then you're part of the creation. Under the influence of that understanding, if you do any action, that will not form impressions. But if you feel that you are a separate individual, that you are separate from anything outside your boundary of your skin is other, and anything inside the envelope of your skin is I, me. And if you have that feeling, then the samskaras are formed. But by meditation and by thinking and understanding that you are part of the whole nature, you are part of the whole creation, and you cannot live independently without sun or without air or without, oxygen, whatever it is, then you're interdependent, and then you're not, you feel that you're interconnected with the whole world, and your actions influence not only you but the whole world. And if you do any action with this understanding that you are part of the whole creation, then samskaras will not form. That is, in another way to put it, if you think that you are doing this action to please the master, or if you do an action thinking that it is the command of the master, then it will not form impressions. But if you feel that you are an independent person, which pretty much 99% of the population have this very powerful intuition that there is a what is called a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, sitting somewhere in just behind my forebrain. He is understanding things. He receives the information from the world, and he takes decision to drink tea, coffee, or do office work and all that. This is a very powerful and very powerful intuitive feeling is there, which is called the ego or ahankara. So this causes all the suffering in this world. But the reality is there is no such CEO inside your head. So the feeling that you are separate from the world is called asmita, which is graded as a klishtavriti, that is a painful thought, which can cause you pain and misery and suffering. So when we are meditating on divine light without luminosity, when the mind gets absorbed in the divinity, this klishtavriti, this painful thought that you are an ego, is totally washed off, and then you're free from ego, and then that is liberation. Then that mind becomes a divine instrument. Then you feel completely at bliss. Unconditional bliss will be there. There will be no, even if you have diseases, even if the whole economy shakes up and everything happens, it will not cause you pain or suffering, because you've transcended the limitations of time, space, and causation. So we all have minds, but we are capable of forming samskaras. We are capable of not forming samskaras. We cannot form samskaras if we take every work you do, whether I'm talking to your wife, children, or parents, or doing work in my hospital. If I treat it as a command of the master, samskaras will not form. But anything else will lead to samskaras, and you form a network. And network is called samsara. That means you're born, you die, you undergo the various experiences during one lifetime, and then you die, you again get reborn, and then you keep, at each life you keep on gathering a lot of experiences, and then even then you are dissatisfied. Then finally you come to a realization that true satisfaction is not found in experiences in this body and this is world. There must be something deeper, mystery is there. Then you start searching for this mystery. From there, the spiritual life begins. Atul, आपका question, I don't know whether I answered it or not.
Right, sir, right. Like,
God को mind नहीं रहता. That is clear. If he has got mind, he is less like you and me. But he works through the mind of a evolved soul, actually. Like Babuji was, he found that in the entire creation, Babuji's mind was the most purified mind. So he became an instrument of nature itself, and he has become the special personality, like that. Like all of us, if our mind is pure, we will be contributing, or God will use your mind to bring about certain effects in this world. You may know, you may not know about it. That's a different matter altogether. The next wala padenge, we'll read the.
okay. The practical pursuit. Realization is a practical pursuit of which direct perception through practical experience is essential. The rigid rules of life generally put forth as essentials for the pursuit of hardly practicable in the normal life of a man. What the world needs today is an efficient method based on a scientific lines and running in close collaboration with our normal living. Our great master, with due regard to all these difficulties and keeping in view our physical and mental disabilities and shorter span of life, has by his kind grace offered us this easiest way, which ensures greatest success in least possible time, without unnecessarily toil or exertion. Under Sahaj Marg, the master, by the application of his inner powers, awakens to action and accelerate the dormant forces in the Abhyasi and divert the flow of divine current towards his heart through the process of pranahuti. As a result, the Abhyasi begins to advance spiritually, experiencing more and more of bliss. The Abhyasi has only to prepare himself to receive it, or in other words, to make himself capable and deserving of it. In this way, all that which previously requires ages of persistent labor and hardship can now be achieved very easily in a much shorter time with little labor. But it is all practical and cannot in any way be put in words. Only practical experience can reveal its merits. A great wonder of the system is that a teacher trained in this system, though he may not himself be actually up to a certain stage, can yet make Abhyasi have a taste of that stage through transmission. The reason is that it is not really the teacher himself who is imparting anything to the Abhyasi through transmission, but the great master himself who does everything through the medium of the teacher's person. Thus, the personal limitations of a teacher do not have any effect upon the Abhyasi, and what he apparently seems to be transmitting comes directly from the unlimited. The teacher must, however, have his will sufficiently developed to affect the course of the flow towards the Abhyasi. Shall I continue?
Continue.
Okay. The next important thing to be kept in mind is moral discipline, which everyone must be very particular about. He must never do a thing which might bring a bad name to himself or to the sanstha he belongs to. His way of living and dealing with others should be simple, unassuming, and cordial, inspired with a feeling of love and sympathy for others. This will be a source of satisfaction and peace to him as well. One should lead a simple and pious life, absorbed in constant divine consciousness, discharging properly at the same time all his worldly responsibilities and duties. There is not the least justification for anyone to flee away from home in utter disregard of his worldly duties and wander about without any definite aim or purpose. As a matter of fact, even in that state of so-called vairagya, one is seldom free from the feelings of worldliness. If a grahastha who has ignored God can be presumed to be deceiving God, the so-called vairagi will prove a worse sinner. Saint Kabir has aptly remarked, God remains 20 paces off from a brahmachari and 30 paces off from a sannyasi, whereas he resides within a grahastha who entertains him in his heart. We should really try to be with God and in God all the time and never be away from him even for a moment. When we come up to this state, we are all the time in a state of vairagya. Thus, attachment with God results in detachment from the world, and that is true vairagya. Some persons seem to be under the impression that the practices prescribed under this system are by themselves sufficient for the attainment of the final goal, but that is not exactly so. While referring to sadhana under Sahaj Marg, I must draw attention to the real spirit of it. The abhyasi must not fix his mind upon its outer features only. Unfortunately, people keep their eye only on formal rules and methods and ignore the real spirit. Under the system, though the spiritual training is imparted through transmission, still the most important and indispensable thing remains for the abhyasi to develop in himself. It is love and devotion to the supplement the abhyasi. This feature was introduced into Rajayoga by Lord Krishna in order to speed up the progress of abhyasi. The only way to develop love is constant remembrance. While doing your daily work, you must think that you are doing it in the obedience to God's orders, and hence a part of your duty. The simple process, if followed in the right spirit, will keep you in touch with the ultimate. Another advantage would be that you will stop further formation of samskaras. The constant remembrance promotes attachment to God, which develops into bhakti. This is because the heat contained in the thought stimulates emotion, which assume the form of bhakti. If you turn it into a habit, you will find how fast love develops in you. It is, in fact, an essential feature of spiritual life. So, love and devotion is the key. That is what.
That's right, yes. So, Tinsikya message में भी यही है ना, detail. We did a seminar. One of the first seminars we did about Tinsikya message, about this aspect of love and devotion. People think that only following Rajayoga superficial practices is everything. They don't go deep into the matter. They think that the process will end there only. But unless they have love and devotion, and that is the responsibility of the sadhak to develop love and devotion, and uses the word fakir. The duty of a fakir is to get his duty done, and that is developing love and devotion. Elaborately, he deals in that when the Tinsukya ashram was opened, he gave that message actually. And we did a seminar on that also.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
One big question, like how do we develop love and devotion? Because
he will come to it. You see, the love bole to kya hai? That means you give more value to the, like Babuji is there. He has helped so many people enjoy a lot of peace and happiness in their lives by his constant efforts. He used to almost every day till morning 3-4 he used to sit and write probably so many letters every day, some 50-60 letters to all the abhyasis to guide them in meditation, all that. So you see that person, then you feel that if you follow such a master who is affectionate towards all of us, that is more valuable than my sleep, my comfort, and my leisure and my pleasure. Generally, what happens, people value their life as most valuable thing. But when you start feeling that there's something else which is more valuable than you, then you can start thinking that you have got a love for that value actually, which is represented by your guru or whatever it is. So the one of the signs of love is that when you love anybody, suppose you common romantic loves also, most of you have those experiences in life. If you like anybody, a film star or something, or you like your any male or female person, if they are attached, they constantly the thought about them keeps on coming into your mind. You will be you know, the famous honeymoon effect is there, where people is just, they'll be thinking about their beloved in whatever, whether male or female. So if you think repeatedly about a certain thing, correspondingly, the other side of the coin, you'll develop love for that object actually. So it can be created actually. Like suppose you're doing a prayer and then you want to feel, oh Master, thou art the real goal of human life. If you retain those thoughts and you say that he is we are slaves of wishes, and then you're the only God and power. These three ideas, if you retain in your mind, a corresponding feeling will arise in the mind, a feeling of humility, a feeling of dependency on God will, that emotion will come in your mind. If you retain this thought for some time, you can experience it yourself. You can just close your eyes, and then after this reading session is over, you can close your eyes and just try to retain the feeling of this prayer for a few minutes, about 3-4 minutes, and then you can watch that it leads to a feeling of calmness, a feeling of humility and all that. In the same way, when you think about the master or think about divine light, a feeling of attachment grows towards that, and that can be taken as love actually. So repeatedly thinking about anything will develop attachment towards the thing which you're thinking. Like suppose you think about buying a property or buying a car, or buying a certain stock, you constantly brood over it. So you get attached to that thing, and then if you get it, you'll feel happy. If you don't get what you crave or what you desire for that, you felt disappointed. That is you are attached to a certain thing. So here we are attaching to a higher value or a real value called God or the Guru or the Master. So that attachment will lead paradoxically to what is called Vairagya. Vairagya is a state of mind when your mind is absolutely calm and blissful. I mean, there's no the mind is so calm, you don't want to lose that state of mind at all. So he addresses the question which you have raised now. I think next paragraphs will answer your question actually.
On page 37 also, sir, it's written,
Yeah,
only way to develop love is constant remembrance.
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yeah.
Continue.
In certain sanस्थas, the process followed for practice is often kept confidential. It is released or revealed only to those who undertake to join them formally. What their purpose at the bottom may be is not quite understandable. Nature has no secrets, and I think one professing to follow divine path must have none either. The practice followed in our mission is meditation on heart. The same method has been recommended by Patanjali. The basic principle of this process has been discussed in my efficacy of Rajayoga, which I don't mean to repeat here. The process helps us immensely in throwing off grossness of being and in assuming a state of greatest subtleness. God is completely devoid of grossness. So, realization of God must also be attained of a similar state of subtleness and purity. This is the greatest merit of this system. It helps the Abhyasi to free himself from grossness settled in the form of coverings. Master's help through the process of pranahuti is of utmost importance in this respect. For this reason, it is essential for the Abhyasi to keep away from methods and practices which, instead of eliminating grossness from his being, tend to increase it all the more. We must never keep ourselves rigidly fixed upon wrong traditional ways which do not seem to promise the desired results. Rather, we should adopt only those which may helpful to us in our march towards subtleness. A man can be a real man only when his eye is diverted towards his inner self. Therein lies the real quest for reality. One who adheres to it establishes his footing in the sphere from which everything descends by itself. In other words, he connects his link with the main source. The only thing which remains then is its expansion to which for which the prescribed abhyas is sufficient. I prescribe I prescribe the easiest means. Still some people do not pay much heed to it. The reason may perhaps be that they have no real craving. When craving is created, may God will it so, the attainment of goal becomes a question of no time. I regret to say that most of our fellow associates remain too much occupied with their own self, attaching to it the greatest importance. Innumerable lives have gone by, but our return to the homeland could not be effected yet. And even now, the craving for that does not seem to have revived in the heart. In fact, all this depends upon the sweet will of God. May they have of me even as much as I may be capable of imparting, and beyond that, if their longing still persists, I will be most gladly advise them to seek for another, better accomplished one. The greatest joy to the world would be to see people going higher than myself. What or where I am, the master alone is in the full know of it. Only so much am I able to understand that I am incapable of determining the limits of my approach, not knowing how much more I have to swim on yet. However, if any of my associates at any later time comes to a full understanding of it, he may have to repent for not availing of it fully at that time. I wonder why their hearts are not moved even though I remind them of it so often. Perhaps it is due to some of my own shortcomings. Our method is so simple that for this very reason, it sometimes becomes very difficult for people to realize its true significance. Difficulties arise when people do not take God just as He is, but fit Him into numerous arti- artificialities created in their own minds to suit their own taste and likings, and thus put Him completely within the sheet of Maya. They worship Him as much with the result that they themselves get engrossed in Maya, or in other words, they become the worshippers of Maya in gross form. Now, if anyone comes up to explain it to them, they run away from him, thinking that he is trying to delude them. They appreciate more the Mahatmas who, being themselves dyed in various hues of Maya, offer them colorful things which are suited to their taste. The common mistake is that they do not care to pay attention to those vital facts they seek for liberation from those who have it not. Really, most of them do not have any aspiration for liberation at all. They adhere to gods and goddesses only to serve their worldly ends. There may, however, be a few who worship God as well, but by the way only, and that too for merely selfish purposes. They are, in fact, not even worthy of having this type of spiritual training, nor they capable of it. As a matter of fact, while we are marching towards unity, they, on the other hand, are drifting continuously towards diversity and are directing the flow of thoughts into numerous different channels. Thus, our power of thought, being diversely applied, gets weakened and shattered, and our effort for realization end in failure. Usually, I do not take such persons into our satsang because I feel convinced that all labor upon them will be fruitless. Consequently, instead of wasting my time on them, I must utilize it for the spiritual benefit of others who crave for it. Do we need a pause or shall I continue?
Can you give 1 or 2 minutes pause just so that we can. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Under this system, there is absolutely no room for anything except true worship of God, the one absolute. It is not at all possible to proceed with it with gods and goddesses besides. If there be anyone who finds himself too weak to give it up, I cannot compel him to do so, but in that case, I cannot be held responsible for his progress. If they are not prepared to give up what is not needed, why should they at all go to others to seek for other means? Their very hankering after other means and methods goes to show that they have no firm faith in what they follow, that at the bottom of the heart they realize some error or deficiency. The only course open to them is to pray earnestly for some time for His grace to guide them onto the right path. For the practical aspect of the sadhana, it is essential to take up the practical course of spiritual training for which we need proper guidance. Guidance sought from books is not of much avail since it's often misleading and sometimes dangerous too. Methods prescribed in books are generally confusing, touching the outer aspect only. One can never become a physician in the true sense by merely reading the names of medicines and their properties in the books. Similarly, by acquiring an outer physical knowledge about God, soul, etc., or of the various spiritual states of path, one can never claim to have realized the objects in true sense. It is impossible to come up to a thorough understanding of the taste of mango merely by reading in book the description of it. That the proof of the pudding lies in the eating of it. It is a well-known saying. The teacher of today, too, who profess to guide people on the path, induce people to similar means, giving out false assurances of progress, and people on their part never bother about having an understanding whether the methods they are advised to adopt relate to their physical, mental, or spiritual growth, or to none at all. In most cases, even when they are presumed to have made an advance, they are actually found to be more entangled in philosophic controversies relating to Jiva, Maya, or Brahman, soul, nature, and God. They are usually the only topics of conversation for people when they go to a Mahatma for darshan, perhaps without having any other serious object or purpose. Now the question arises whether the solution of such problem, if at all secured, is in any way helpful to their spiritual purpose. I think the answer must definitely be in the negative. Of what value can it be then to them? It is mere mental jugglery, tarka, and nothing else. Most people are groping in darkness. They consider stones should represent or stand for God. They have lost their senses of discrimination. They cannot distinguish between man and man, nor between man and other beings. Who is a man? Only he who is immused with sense of humanity. But the real man, in the proper sense, can be he who makes a man the man, and he ought to be a thorough man in the real sense. How can one judge him? He can neither be a magician nor a conjurer who can demonstrate things unusual and uncommon. But there may be many such conjurers among bhaktas who pretend themselves to be what they are not in the least. They go on crowing Ram Ram on every bead of their rosary with the heart wandering quite away from it. The majority of the people you will find singing songs of devotion, shouting Jai Jai, worshipping pictures and images ceremoniously is a hobby for them. To them, stories and illustrations are the means of bhakti. Recitation of sacred book is worship, and discussions and discourses the attainment of jnana. Teachers and preachers too are not wanting. Go to anybody and he'll tell you something or the other to follow. Their hue and cry is so great that the whole firmament is resounding with the noise. But the wonder of wonders is that even then it is never is reflected in their heart. And in spite of all the clamor, they remain where they have never been, neither gaining what they have to gain, nor even losing what they have to lose. In demonstration of their worship, they have cried, chanted, flattered, and wept, but all to no purpose at all. Yet they think themselves to be bhaktas and are admired as great souls. Thus, in a way, they get their remuneration for all their acting. They acquire a position and are considered to be leaders or gurus amongst their circles of bhaktas. That is all that their flattery brings forth for them. It may not, however, be unfair to say that most of the ways of worship commonly followed by the masses are but forms of flattery in one way or the other. They are completely devoid of attachment, love, or surrender. Obviously, all they do is aim more at pleasing themselves rather than pleasing the gods they worship. And this being closely associated with the senses is, of course, a base desire. In other words, they remain all through entangled with their senses, and this they presume to be ananda, an abstract idea on the very face of it. For this reason, in spite of all their toilsome acting, they remain forever deprived of bountiful grace of the divine. My only object in relating to you all this is to impress upon your mind that such outer demonstration of flattery do not count the least in awakening the inner consciousness in the heart. It is all for the worldly desires related with the senses, which have really no end. Because if you sense, desired is fulfilled. Because if one sense desired is fulfilled, the other associated with it props up at once in its place. These practices do not therefore offer us means of deliverance from the network of wishes and desires, and consequently, no practical purpose can be served thereby. True bhakti is devoid of any physical desire related to senses. It is actuated by the real craving, a craving which, when fulfills, does not give rise to another in its place, but puts an end to all the cravings. It is, in true sense, the reminiscence of the homeland, which, in the final end of our journey, as a rule, the reminiscence of the home, which will keep the remembrance of the God alive in our heart, and vice versa. It is, in fact, an end which is endless, and the craving for it is beyond the range of materiality, not to speak of senses. It is what is commonly understood as realization, oneness, destination, or the end. Attachment to it may otherwise is interpreted as constant remembrance, and that is what bhakti means in true sense. If it is not there, it is but a mockery and be termed as flattery. Flattery is harmful to both the flatterer and to flattered. A king having all flatterers about him is sure to come to harm on that account. He must therefore apply stringent methods to stop this evil. Nature too may have possibly adopted a course of action for the purpose. The result shall, however, come to the light by itself in due course.
Any questions, Atul? I think we'll stop here today.
Can I have a query, sir? One
Yes.
small. Sir, in our previous, paragraphs, it said one can feel the gradual transformation in his being if he is sufficiently sensitive, it says. One can feel the gradual transformation in his being if he is sufficiently sensitive. In first of the paragraph, first two paragraphs we read. So how to develop this sensitivity by, maybe that will help us refine.
Like, first of all, when you're meditating, if you're correctly meditating and then you're doing your cleaning properly, taking regular individual sittings from the trainer, you will feel tranquility and calmness.
Right, sir.
Becoming aware of the tranquility itself is sensitivity.
Okay.
But when more cleaning is done,
okay,
when the mind becomes more pure, you will be able to feel the nature of your mind. The mind, like suppose if it is thinking about the master, it will become very calm. And if we keep on observing that calmness keeps on changing and it will become very subtle in it. Your awareness of that state of mind keeps changing. And you'll also observe that when you leave the remembrance of the master, the mind is back in collecting complexities and all that. You will see it is a skill which can be developed, but sensitivity is directly related to the attraction your mind has got towards God. So the more it gets attracted towards God, and the consequent peace it will feel, it will not find much attachment with the material sensory desires actually. So when sensory desires come down, your sensitivity increases actually. When your desires come down, desires include aversions also. That means suppose you're feeling excessive heat in the summer, you want that this discomfort due to heat should go away. That is also aversion. So desires include aversions also. You dislike something, means impurity is there. So if those impurities go away in the form of desires and aversions, your sensitivity will increase. It is directly proportional to your practice actually.
Moderation of both likings and dislikings.
You have to basic aim of spirituality, if you can call it as a intermediate goal, is that equanimity. That means your mind is not upset if somebody praises you. It is not upset if somebody blames you. Your mind is not destabilized if something good thing happens, something bad thing happens. You don't go into feeling regret or remorse or sadness, and something good happens, you don't get excited about it. So that is called equanimity. And that is only possible when you transcend likes and dislikes. Transcending likes and dislikes happens when you feel the presence of God everywhere. When your mind is, when you become very skilled in meditation, your mind will feel connected to the divine presence. And when divine presence is felt, you will start seeing divine everywhere. So you will stop judging anything as good or bad. Then you transcended likes and dislikes. When you transcended likes and dislikes, you can think that you transcended the ego also. Then you become very, very sensitive.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So Babuji at one place has clearly stated that there is no point in fighting with our lower vrittis, and we should attach with the higher and grow more in that attachment. So can this ego be left as a lower vritti in us? There is no, we should not be very
No, no,
conscious of it, or we should not fight it knowingly.
the the lower vrittis here means the pranam, your desires, the drives, actually, the sexual drive, trying to get pleasures from with food and sensory pleasures which come in indulging in sexual pleasures and all that. They are all drives, actually, drive related passions and lust and all that. They are the lower vrittis, actually. The traditional people, they used to take sannyas. They're afraid of facing those desires, so they try to cut off from the society and go to some jungles to avoid the temptations of the flesh, so-called flesh and all that. So they keep fighting with those lower vrittis. He says it is impossible, even if you, for 1,000 years, if you keep fighting with your lower vrittis, it is just like that case of that story in Ramayana, between fight between Vali and Sugriva. Vali is that whoever fights with him, half the power goes to him. In the same way, your lower vrittis, when you try to fight with them, they drag your soul power and then they become stronger. So he says, don't fight with your lower vrittis, or fight with the desires arising out of your flesh. That means hunger, whatever pleasures which man is very easily succumbs to physical pleasures or sensory pleasures. Instead of that, you meditate on the divine, and when you meditate on the divine, your mind becomes tranquil. Try to retain that effect of meditation for longer and longer periods. If you try to retain, your mind starts enjoying that calmness. And a stage comes when you feel this calmness is much more valuable than the pleasures you get out of the lust for flesh pleasures and all that. So that is how he describes that. Now, coming to ego, he says, ignore ego. You cannot fight with ego, because you, truly speaking, from the ultimate point of view, ego is not there. Ego is not the truth. But the from a Vyavaharika point of view, from the conventional reality, ego has to be there to carry on the social interaction, social reality. I have to call myself as Dr. So-and-so, so-and-so. You have to call yourself Atul and all that. So for that sake, it needs, for our day-to-day social interactions, it is required. So you can't even say it is non-existent. So if you're meditating and then you're absorbed in the object of meditation, you transcend ego, you forget ego naturally over a period of time. If you say it is not there, then no, I'm not existing. As you keep on repeating personally, you remember it, it becomes stronger. That's what he says. He said, don't fight with ego. Try to think about God. Naturally, you're forgetting about the ego automatically. So whenever you're in meditation, during that time, the ego is weakened, actually, because your mind is not, thoughts are not, self-referential thoughts are not there. Like if I talk about my headache or my pain, so there the ego is there. So if I try to impress you with my medical knowledge and all that, I want that you should recognize me as a great doctor, my ego is there, because self-referential thoughts. Any self-referential thought is there, ego becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. But here, when you are thinking about divine light and when you keep your attention steadily on divine light, during that period, ego is not being strengthened at all. But if you come back and then forget God, then the ego becomes stronger again. Like the very fact that you are judging Putin, your ego is becoming stronger. So you should not, you have to have sufficient willpower and discipline to see the essence of master in Putin also. Because he know all people as thy brethren and treat them as such. His mind, because in the particular situations he is born, particular concepts, his parents and society has instilled, he's got a certain way of thinking. But behind the mind is the same master is there in him also. So you should have the self-discipline to be aware of the presence of master in all good and bad people also. Then you are practicing correctly. So if you are not alert and you allow your indisciplined mind to overtake you, then ego gets stronger and stronger. Any moment your alertness is lost, ego becomes stronger. In Viveka Chudamani, he gives 3 interesting examples. You can also read about the story of Nala Damayanti. I mean, how Nala was a very famous story. He was a very great man and he gets married to Damayanti, who was a very beautiful princess actually. But all the gods, I mean, the people who are living in Swarga, in Indra and all that, they also wanted to marry Damayanti. But then she chooses Nala actually. And one of the celestial being wants to exact revenge on Nala. So he keeps on trying to cause difficulties to him, but he could not do anything to him because his mind was very pure. One day he takes bath and then tries to do his Sandhya Vandanam, whatever prayer he's trying to do. He does not clean his feet properly. There's one area where the cleanliness was not there. He didn't wash his feet properly. Through that area, that spirit enters and then creates havoc in his life. So there is a word, technical word in yoga for this. It's called pramada. That means carelessness in spiritual practice can allow the Saturn to enter into your mind and destroy your spiritual agenda totally. The other way, like Shankaracharya talks about the ego, he compares our ego to a citrus plant. You know, citrus plants are there like orange or nimbu and all that. When the summer comes, it becomes totally dry, as if there are no leaves, nothing is there. But one drop of rain comes, and if you put a mug of water, immediately it becomes green. So if you are meditating on God continuously, if you take the metaphor of ego as a plant, then the plant will become dry and it becomes almost dead. But you withdraw your attention from God and then you talk, you get attracted to the world or sensual pleasures, then it is as if you put some water or some rain on the citrus plant, immediately it becomes green. It becomes very powerful again. So spirituality in one sense is not that easy. It's a continuous battle you have to wage between the 2 contradictory forces. The forces which will be asking you to enjoy the pleasures of the world, and enjoy pleasures of the world mean name and fame and recognition in society also. It is not purely sensual pleasures. Sensual pleasures also mean the feeling that society should recognize you are some great man or something. Name and fame are also very powerful motivating factors for you to, people go to any extent to have the legacy. You know, Putin wants, for example, he wants his legacy that people should recognize that he was a great Russian. Like Nehru wanted that he should have his legacy that he's a great statesman in the world and all that. That's why he gave up the UN permanent representative to China. He said China is more populous. He gave it to them. So he wanted to be recognized as a man of peace and all that. So that is also ego. So it is not easy actually. But if you practice keeping his advice in mind, it is doable. It can be done if you have his grace and then you follow him sincere. With sincere intention is important. As long as your mind is thinking about God, during that time the ego is weakened actually. And you forget God. That means you break your constant remembrance, ego becomes stronger again. Anything else? We'll meet next Sunday then, Atul.
Okay.
You got the idea of how the ego plays with you, and you're a victim actually, and then it takes you for a ride actually.
You pointed out a very good point. The moment we are judging, like
Judging is ego, that's all. That
even though
you've forgotten that God is there in his heart actually.
very true.
Whether he may be a villain, whether he may be, for conventional social interaction, you may talk just like that. But you should hold the idea that God is present everywhere, even in a villain or even a saint or whatever it is. If you leave that, if you don't have that self-discipline, you're not practicing your yoga with sincere intention. Okay, then we'll.
Okay.
Next Sunday.